So as you all know, with your blessing, I was able to go to Minneapolis. Um, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was just the other week, at the end of January. And I think there are three main things that I want to share during my little talk today. I have a couple of videos. Um, I have so much I want to share with you. We're not going to get through it all today, but I will definitely make sure to save some time so we can have some Q&A at the end. Um, so,
I
um,
brought it to you.
so the call for this gathering was issued by this organization called March, the Multi-Faith uh, interracial anti-racist change and healing organization, and they've been organizing around all kinds of issues in Minneapolis since the mid to late 90s. Um, and some of you may have heard me say that the first time the call came through inviting, asking clergy to come stand in solidarity with the people of Minneapolis. The first time I said, no, it's not for me to go. I have commitments here. I need to stay home. The second time the call came, I also said, yeah, I don't think I'm among the people who need to answer this call right now. But the third time the call came through, uh, I was just so moved and really felt uh, convicted to go. So, as they said in their own words, Dr. King put out the call in Selma, and we're putting out the call in Minneapolis. So many clergy responded to this call that they actually had to close registration for this event, even though they only announced it a week ahead of time. Um, and actually, the UCC stepped up, and at one of the local churches, they organized a separate overflow training event for clergy who weren't able to fit actually in this first event. And I thought this was so cute. This is from their website, Faith Leaders Answering History in a Time of Peril and Possibility. Thank you for answering the call. Hey, who is that sitting right there in the balcony? Does anyone recognize that left ear? That sweater? I wear it a lot. My little hands folded together. I was like, oh, how cute. Look at that. I'm on the website. Um, the gathering was amazing. It was astounding. Oh, okay. And okay, I was going to show you beautiful pictures of the sanctuary and talk about how moving it was to be with 700 other faith leaders from across faith traditions. But before we get to that part, um, I want to talk about this place. And this place that you see on the screen right here is Bedote. And the word Bedote uh, in the Dakota language means confluence or meeting of two waterways. And so right here you see the meeting of the Mississippi and the Minnesota rivers. But Bedote has extra significance in the Twin Cities because this spot on your screen right here is the Garden of Eden for the Sioux people. One of the things I learned during my trip to Minneapolis is that Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota are not actually three different tribes, but they are three different language groups within the Sioux tribe. So the Sioux people who speak Dakota are the people who come from this place. And this little piece of land that you're looking at, Bedote, is the site of their creation story. For the Dakota people, this spot right here is where all life began. So I'm going to show you a little video to just share a little more about this. Let me pull that up. All right, we want this one.
Where two rivers come together is a confluence, and in Dakota we call that the Bedote. There are many sacred places within this larger Bedote sacred landscape. This Bedote is particularly important to us because it's the site of our creation. Many people call this the center of our existence as Dakota people. It is the connection of our histories, both between Genesis and our genocide, that really sort of tie together the importance of this place as a sacred place.
So we're at a place called Coldwater Springs. When we're talking about erasure from history, this is a prime example. Back in 2009, we had elders come to us, and they asked us to protect this site. Ultimately, the Park Service rejected the oral histories that were collected by elders who are no longer with us today. It will stir emotions inside of you, but it will also keep a fire burnt to continue that fight that they started many years ago.
This place, Oheawahe, is both a site of ceremony as well as burial. There's no escaping that this is a site of colonization. This is not a pure and pristine place, but it doesn't have to be. The power is still here.
Our people have been coming to these places and various other sacred sites in the Twin Cities, and I feel like sense of power to be able to walk these same places that your ancestors did.
This is Dakota homeland, and so we have a responsibility as contemporary natives to protect these sites.
Funding for this
So there are 13,000 years of native presence. 13,000 years of native presence in this area. And you may have heard in the video that they talked about how this place is the site of both their creation and their genocide. And one of the speakers at our main gathering on Thursday, Father Jim Bear, talked to us about this, about how the history of Native peoples in this place is one of both creation and genocide. So in a way, while we are all shocked with horror of what is happening in Minneapolis right now, it is actually a very, very old story that is just repeating itself in a new way in this time and place. So I want to share one more short little 2-minute video with you that tells the creation story of the Dakota people. Let me bring that up for you.
Our story of our creation, the origin of our people. It's a story that I heard many times growing.
No, we don't want to run. We want to watch it.
Yeah. Wakantanka, the great mystery, created many children. And into each of his children, he placed a part of himself. He gave the quality of swiftness to the deer, majesty to the eagle. This story is geographically specific. It's connected to a specific land base, and it's this land base that it's connected to. I was taught that this story takes place at a place we call Makachokayakin, which means the center of the earth. Another word we have for this place is Badote. And in our language, Badote literally means the joining or juncture of two bodies of water. The primary Badote is right where the Minnesota River joins the Mississippi. And in English, that place is known as Mendota today. And it's right where Fort Snelling sits, at that juncture of the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers. And we know that the story takes place at this site, in particular because this story is marked on the landscape. Downriver on the Mississippi, there's a bluff, and in English it's known as Barnes Bluff, but in Dakota we call that place Chaske Tanka. Chaske in our language meaning firstborn child and male, and Tanka meaning large or big. And Chaske Tanka existed for thousands of years, and you could see the profile of a Dakota face on that bluff, at least until 1954, when it was dynamited to make way for a bridge that crossed the Mississippi River into Wisconsin. And now that site has been desecrated. And even downriver from Chaske Tanka is Chaske Chistina. And Chaske Chistina, again, Chaske meaning firstborn child and male, Chistina, meaning little or small, is downriver. And those two bluffs mark the first beings that were created. This story is geographically specific. That is, it takes place here in this land, and it ties our people, the Dakota Oyate, specifically to this land.
I know that sometimes when we share land acknowledgments in worship, people say, what's the point? What difference does it make? And for me, I think it is so important to share our land acknowledgement every week as part of the unlearning of our own internal racism as people whose ancestors came as colonizers of this land. It is not ancient history, but it is connected through to the present. It is still very real and connected to injustices that we see this day. So I have this little map for you here. And this here is Badote, where the Mississippi and the Minnesota rivers come together right here. Right over here is Fort Snelling. And Fort Snelling was the first military industrial complex built in this area. And it is also the site of the first concentration camp built in this area. After the Dakota War of 1862, Fort Snelling was used as a concentration camp that temporarily held Dakota women, children, and elders. It was established in November of 1862, and it held about 1,700 Dakota people, just like these ICE detention facilities are now holding people who have been detained by ICE. The conditions in the camp were miserable. and between 130 and 300 Dakota people died from disease and malnutrition, just like people are dying in ICE detention today. A Dakota leader wrote, "We were so crowded and confined that an epidemic broke out among us. Oh, just like the measles epidemic that has broken out in the Dilley Family Detention Center in Texas. We were so crowded and confined that an epidemic broke out among us, and children were dying day and night. Amid all this sickness and these great tribulations, it seemed doubtful at night whether a person would be alive in the morning." Now, if you look at the map, you will see that next to historic Fort Snelling is the Whipple Building. And the Whipple Building is the primary ICE detention facility in the Twin Cities. Now, there is great irony here that the Whipple Building is named for the Episcopalian bishop Henry Benjamin Whipple, who was a great advocate for the imprisoned Dakota people. Bishop Whipple and Reverend Williamson, who lived among the Dakota his whole life, joined them in their ordeal at this detention center and remained with them as they were exiled into South Dakota. So the first thing I want to share with you from my time in Minneapolis was just my profound gratitude at the Native elders and teachers who were willing to share with us this history and to remind us that the horrors we are seeing in our country right now are not new. There is a line going through them throughout history, directly from the Garden of Eden, the point of creation for the Dakota people, right through Fort Snelling, the first military industrial complex in the area, and through to the Whipple Building, where people are being unjustly held in detention this day. Okay, now we're going to go back to some of the joy. So here's a picture from the sanctuary at Westminster Presbyterian Church, which held our gathering. There were somewhere between 600 and 700 clergy from across the country, from across faith traditions. And as I shared in church, it's this little lady right up here in the front who, when we were going through our icebreaker welcome exercise, raise your hand if you were somewhere yesterday you could walk outside without a coat. Raise your hand if you were somewhere yesterday where you could see the ocean. Raise your hand, you know, all those different ways they called people into the place. And when they said, raise your hand if you were at the original march in Selma, this sweet woman raised her hand proudly and then looked around to see if there were any other alumni from the first march in Selma who were there. She was the only one, but she came carrying that powerful lineage. So here's another shot of the crowd. There were Jews and Buddhists and Sikhs and Christians of every flavor and a ton of Unitarians. They were very, very well represented. As you look at the crowd, you will notice it is a particularly pale crowd, which felt very appropriate. It is our black and brown siblings that are so at risk by our government right now. And it is our job. It is our job as white people to stand up, to stand out, to stand on the front line and protect them. So, I'll back up a sec. So our first day together was a lot of workshops. 200 lucky individuals got an orange ticket when they checked in. And at one point in the morning, they were all told to rise and leave and get on coach buses. And they took them to some areas of the city that were very heavily being patrolled by ICE, and they set them out to do ICE watch and to be a presence and to help keep people safe. I was very sad that I had not gotten a lucky orange ticket when I checked in, so I didn't get to go out on the bus on the ICE watch field trip. But I also accepted my fate because one of the conditions for Shelby giving her blessing on this journey was that I not actively, hi, Alan, that I not actively do anything that would get me arrested. I mean, we both knew that there was a chance no matter what, but I said I would not actively engage in any action that might lead to my arrest. So our first day, there was singing and speakers and learning. And then in the afternoon, there was a series of workshops. Folks could go to practice singing in the resistance, or they could go and get trained in how to be a legal observer. There was a workshop about, how to shift the narrative, how to tell the story in ways that will reach people. All kinds of different workshops offered. And I guess that's the second thing I want to lift up. The first being the powerful learning from our Indigenous elders that this current horror is nothing but the latest chapter in a long history of horror on this land. But the second thing that I want to lift up is that we are building a movement. One of the afternoon workshops was actually offered by one of my colleagues in Protect Rogers Park. I actually learned that she was going at a meeting we had Tuesday night before I got on the train on Wednesday. So I went to her workshop, which was about storytelling and shaping the narrative. I went to be a support to her. In the room, I ran into the woman who was the initial leader of my Nevertheless She Preached cohort, the continuing education project I've been part of this year. And sitting up in the balcony, I made some raucous comment or laughed or something that got the attention of two young people sitting in the pew behind me. And we reconnected in the lobby after lunch. And I said, "Oh, yeah, we were sitting next to each other in the balcony this morning." And she said, "Oh, your name tag says Chicago. We're from Chicago too." And I said, "Oh, where are you from?" And she said, "Oh, we're affiliated with, I don't know, some fancy Episcopalian church downtown, Church of the Ascension, maybe. I don't know." She said, "And we live in Rogers Park." I said, "Tell me where you live." And she said, "Well, we live in Rogers Park, but our church is down in the Gold Coast." I said, "No, no, no. Let me be clearer." I said, "I live at 1815 West Farwell in Rogers Park. Where do you live?" She said, "Oh, I live at 1649 West Farwell." I went all the way to Minneapolis to meet someone who lives 2 blocks away from me. And immediately I said, "Are you part of Protect Rogers Park? Are you on the email list? Because I help run the email communications. And if you're not on the email list, I want to get you on it." And she said, "Oh, we're not on the email list, but we are on the ICE Watch list." And I said, "Great. Oh, by the way, what are you doing on Saturday, January 31st? She said, "Oh, you mean next Saturday?" I said, "Oh, yeah, that is next Saturday, isn't it?" I said, "Well, we're having this community assembly from 10 to noon. If you don't have anything on your calendar, you should come." She said, "Oh, my calendar's empty. I'm going to put it on it right now." So I uh, went to Minneapolis to meet Ellie and Josh, only to learn that we are already part of the same movement. And Ellie's going to help with some song leading at our mutual aid organizing meeting on Monday night. It is so beautiful to see that this is truly a movement, a nationwide movement that's taking shape. So Friday morning, there were a variety of actions that people could take. You may have seen this one on the news, CNN, New York Times. Oh, it was even in the opening monologue on the Colbert Show Monday night. And there was a big action at the Minneapolis airport. I had promised to not be part of this action, though it pained me, because there was risk of arrest. This protest was organized both to protest the airlines that are cooperating by running deportation flights, but also to speak out against airport employees who work behind the security gates and have been abducted by Border Patrol and ICE agents while they are at work. And so here you see pictures and posters of some of these workers who have been abducted. Now, you know that airports are run under the federal government. And if you work at the airport, especially if you work behind the TSA lines, you are here with legal permission. You are here authorized to work. You have already been cleared and credentialed, and yet the airport is still colluding with these federal thugs and letting them in, letting them behind security, letting them detain people, abduct them from work. So that was a big protest. It's true, it was 21 degrees below zero that day. And look at all these faithful folks out there protesting on their knees. Over 100 local clergy were arrested in this action. There was another event Friday morning where clergy, you could sign up to walk a pilgrimage from the place where George Floyd was murdered to the place where Renee Good was murdered. And this is the area, this is the altar that has sprung up where she was killed. This was about 24 hours before Alex Preddy was also shot and killed a few miles away from this spot. The protest that I went to, oh, actually, before I went protesting, I went to a morning event at All Nations Indian Church. So you know that we take the Neighbors in Need offering every year right before Christmas. Part of that money goes to support the United Church of Christ's American Indian Ministry. So this is a church that is supported by those funds. It is a joint UCC Episcopal congregation. And the senior pastor is Reverend Joan Conroy. She is Oglala Lakota. And serving with her is her daughter, Dr. Kelly Sherman Conroy, who is the first Native woman to earn a PhD in theology within the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. They have this beautiful worship space. And they actually smudged all of us before we went out into the streets in protest. It was really lovely being with them. They were so gracious to us. And they talked about how ICE is like, it is so unimaginable, friends. ICE is detaining Native Americans, right? There's a huge problem with drug and alcohol abuse in the Native community. There are 11 federally recognized tribes and one state recognized tribe within the Twin City area. So there are folks from 12 tribes in the Twin City area. And, you know, as Dr. Sherman Conroy pointed out, when Native people are removed forcibly from the land, as our government did, it causes illness. It makes them sick. The land, the connection to the land, the connection to Mother Earth is part of the medicine that keeps them well. So they said it's really no surprise that there is so much alcoholism and drug abuse within the Native communities. It is a result of this intergenerational trauma that people carry. And so there are encampments in the Twin Cities where homeless Native people live, and ICE has detained them and has held them in custody and refuses to release them unless the tribes sign letters of agreement to work with immigration and customs enforcement. Explain to me how you can detain Native people in their own country under the guise of immigration enforcement. So there they are, mom and daughter pair, with the sign they made. No one is illegal on stolen land. From there on Friday, I went to a very safe protest where there was no chance of getting arrested. We did a sing-in at a large flagship Target downtown. I'm guessing by now you've heard it's become a nationwide movement to put pressure on Target. They are one of the largest employers in the state of Minnesota, and they are allowing ICE agents to come into their stores to detain people on their properties. Actually, at the Target on Peterson in Chicago this past fall, we learned that ICE agents were using the parking lot as a staging area. So folks are trying to put pressure on Target to say, stop. Don't let them in your parking lots. Don't let them in your buildings. Don't let them arrest your staff. So we did a big sing in. We'll see if I can play. Let's see if this works.
We all rise up.
If one of us falls, we all rise up. If one of us falls, we all rise up. If one of us falls, we all rise up. If one of us falls, we all rise up.
Say it once and say it twice.
Say it once and say it twice.
We will not put up with ice.
We will not put up with ice.
Say it once and say it twice.
Say it once and say it twice.
We will not put up with ice.
We will not put up with ice.
Say it loud and say it clear.
Say it loud and say it clear.
Immigrants are welcome here.
Immigrants are welcome here. Say it loud and say it clear. Immigrants are welcome here. Something about this isn't right.
Target work for ice.
Why does Target work for ICE?
So the person leading this part of the action, his name is Adam. He's the music director at First Unitarian in Hyde Park. And he also ended up being my ride back home canceled when Amtrak canceled all trains on Saturday because of the weather. All right. So the store manager was very angry at us over this protest, but did not call the police. There were no arrests. And after our big sing-in, they ended up shutting down the store for the rest of the day. So here we are at the end. I'm sure there are some people who would have liked to get behind because after this, we went out into the cold. That is ice on the front of my scarf. um, so here I am with a bunch of faith leaders processing from Target to the big rally. I think the official count, oh, there I am again looking cold. There were over 50,000 people in, these frigid temperatures coming out to protest. And then, ironically, the big sports arena downtown is the Target Arena. And they had opened up the building to allow the protest to come inside and have a rally. Because it was so cold. And, this is what it looked like getting in there. It was just so, so many people. Minnesota general strike. The people have the power to stop ICE. It's so true. So that's my little report on my field trip to Minneapolis. And oh, Buddy Bell has been inside that sanctuary. Nice. Nice. Yeah, it was really great to be able to go, to be part of building this community, to proudly represent the people of Wellington. Yes, Stockwell household.
Oh, okay. I'll start. I saw something on Instagram, and it was a video from Minneapolis of a large number of jingle dress dancers. If anybody knows what that is, it's we see it in the powwow. The jingles are these little metal cones sewn to women's
Yeah.
dresses, and it's considered a healing dance. So these groups danced at both the spot where Renee Good was killed and also where Alex Preddy was killed as an act of healing.
Beautiful.
So just letting you know. And
Beautiful.
Clinton?
A question. The phone said about when I asked it, which is going to reflect the establishment, as we know, said that only 3 to 4 indigenous people were arrested. I suspect that you have or may have more accurate numbers, and I was just wondering what if you knew anything about how many of those folks were arrested or detained.
Well, here's the interesting thing, Clinton, is that a lot of the folks who are being detained, both protesters and just people being nabbed off the streets, they are not being charged. So they take you into custody, they zip tie you, they throw you in the back of the van, they take you to the Whipple building, they hold you for 8 to 10 hours, and then they let you go with no charges. So officially, those numbers aren't recorded anywhere, right? If no charges are if you're not charged, then your like arrest sort of didn't happen according to the official metrics. So,
Do you know how many folks were being held hostage that were being basically coerced to sign that note that you mentioned to help ICE?
well, they were looking to have they wanted the tribes to sign official letters of cooperation, and needless to say, the elders were not inclined to sign those. But there has been a lot of extra patrolling, um, like right down the street from the All Nations Indian Church. There's a powwow coffee house that's run by the Native community. So there's been a lot of mutual aid going on there, a lot of ICE patrols, a lot of bringing food to folks, um, a lot of patrolling of the encampments, trying to keep people safe.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, go spend time with those kiddos. Yeah, now I feel a little bit like Ruby, who talked to us about her work with the Tangle Filipino migrant community, and shared so passionately and for so long. But I know that I will be processing and unpacking this trip for a long time. So I invite you to, as things come up, ask questions, stay in community, stay in conversation. Yeah, it was really great to be with so many good-hearted people. Um, and to also, be coming from Chicago, where we have also experienced our own ice terror and probably have it coming back at us again. And I had lots of really encouraging conversations with clergy from all over the country about um, things they can do, ways they can organize. Um, I was encouraging everybody I met from other parts of the country, especially for churches that have large immigrant populations, to work with folks to make family plans, to have documentation in place, so that should the unthinkable happen, that there is a response and a little bit of a safety net. I had dinner one night with some local folks. I spoke with a woman who has been volunteering in the school where her daughter teaches. And she said over the previous 2 weeks, they had 6 kids in their school who had both parents detained. In one neighborhood school community. So it is so encouraging to see like the care, the resistance, the community that's rising up amidst the heartbreak. So
I don't know how I raised my hand.
oh yes, Yvette.
Sorry, I didn't know how to raise my hand.
Oh, that raising your hand works.
As you were talking in closing, it sounded like I heard you saying you sounded hopeful that we have the power to defeat ICE.
We do.
So can you give us any suggestions as individuals how
Mhm.
best we start, what resources to use? I mean, what's the best use of our abilities?
Right. Well, I think, um, yeah, so my conviction, Yvette, is that there is something for everyone to do, be
Mm-hmm.
it be it large or small. And um, I think, I mean, to put it in context a little bit, when Chicago endured Operation Midway Blitz last fall, we had 600 federal agents in Chicago. They sent First they sent 2,000 and then they sent an extra 1,000 to the Twin Cities, which is like one third the size of Chicago. So like just and also the there are 5 times more at the height of the ICE invasion. There were 5 times more federal agents than Minneapolis police officers. I mean, so the scale of it is just brutal.
Mm-hmm.
But why did they have to send another 1,000 agents? Because they were losing. That's why.
Uh,
The people were rising up, the people were being strong. Oh my gosh, it is hysterical. There was actually Fox News published an article this week that quoted some of my colleagues in Protect Rogers Park here in Chicago. And like they claim that we are like, militarized resistance. Um, so I think like, knowing your neighbors, knowing who is directly impacted and most vulnerable in your community, right? Starting to build those networks before you need them is really
mhm.
helpful, which is also hard because like people feel moved to respond like once the invasion comes, right? But it's so important. I think, up in Rogers Park, Protect Rogers Park was organized under the first Trump regime in 2017 and built out a lot of its structures and networks, which has been super helpful in this second round. So I think, um, you know, like gathering up resources, building community, getting to know your neighbors, connecting with local schools, like that's a place where a lot of directly impacted families, they'll be connected there because of their kids, right? And just
Mhm.
asking what kind of support do people need to feel safe? Joey, do you have any other words of wisdom? Joey's a fierce organizer.
Well, how to protect the children that are being picked up? They're now picking up and detaining children.
Yeah. So, I do think having witnesses, having people present, like learning uh de-escalation and de-arrest strategies to get
Mm,
away. Um, I watched this one piece on Minnesota Public Radio about a woman who had been out on ICE patrol the day before Renee Good was killed.
mhm,
And the story, like she drove to her local grocery store parking lot because she got a text from her book club member saying, like the person texted the book club text thread and
mhm,
said, "Oh, I think ICE is like in the Cub Foods parking lot." And they went over, they were like 100 yards away from the agents. They were just observing them, right? 2 more cars of book club ladies showed up. ICE got in their car and started driving away because they are, I mean, they know what they're doing is wrong. That's why they cover their faces. That's why they run when people come in and confront them. So this woman, you know, they were following them through city streets. They were not being aggressive. They were holding back. ICE finally stopped. They blocked the street. They got out. They started harassing the woman. They took a picture of her license plate. They addressed her by name through the window. Terrifying, terrifying. And um, when they finally started driving again and they followed at a distance, she realized that they were going back to her house. And two agents then parked across the street from her house and kept her house under surveillance for the rest of the afternoon. Now, when she realized the agents were going back to her house, she and her husband drove off in a different direction and they went to a public place where they would be around other people. And wouldn't feel so targeted. But let me tell you, like she took two carloads of ICE agents out of commission, out of rotation for an afternoon, right? They were sitting watching her house, which is great because that means they weren't grabbing people off the street while they were doing that. So, like every small bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think Chris, were you next? And
Yeah,
then
and it's a
Karen,
perfect,
and then
perfect,
Joey.
yeah, it's a perfect follow-up because we meaning Mennonite Action Christians for Ceasefire and a collective of Muslim Palestinian Christian Palestinians, JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace. We are focusing on the surveillance. So why can ICE do that in Minnesota and in Chicago and everywhere else? It's because of groups like Palantir. It is a major $14 billion making money. The surveillance, ICE uses them for surveillance, and so does Israel in the West Bank and Gaza. So we are, it just so happens that Ash Wednesday and Ramadan start on the same day, on February 18th. There are going to be things happening throughout the spring because then Ramadan ends and we get into Holy Week and Passover starts during Holy Week. So there's a spring interfaith group actions that are forming, and we are learning more and getting resources around Palantir. So I would say Yvette, because there will be actions to take, like actions in terms of sign on things, actions in terms of showing up for vigils and showing up for protests. And we're working on those now, but that is, they can follow you to your home because of Palantir. And so ICE and Palestine are like the connections are visibly evil and palpable. It's the same evil. The masked
Thank you.
men in the West Bank and in Gaza are the masked men in our cities with ICE and Border Patrol.
Wow.
Clinton and
So you'll
Karen.
see more of that in the weekly news as those things come out. We'll be getting that out to folks.
Yvette's actually off in North Carolina, but
Yeah, but the sign on, the
yeah,
Palantir piece
yeah,
of it is international.
Mhm.
So
Right, right. And one other thing, I have been looking and haven't found any group resisting paying taxes this year because of not wanting to pay the salaries of these ICE people. And do you know of anything about that?
maybe it's time for tax resistance to come back. But no, I have not. I have not seen any actions around that.
Well, I'm going to keep looking. If you hear of anything, if you'd let us know too.
I will. Clinton and Karen.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ann-Louise.
I have a broad question. Um, I know what you're working Rogers Park and also those folks that are working with the immigrant task group and so forth. You're busy, you're trained, you're doing stuff. And I think the same thing is true with I talked to Tim Peebles few that they have their own stuff going, their own training. I'm just kind of wondering if it might be useful at some point in the near future to have some kind of a training and or information gathering to talk about uh, what congregations like Wellington and our friends can at least be aware of, if not participate in, to be a more active part of what you're talking about.
Amen to that, Clinton. I mean, we have talked about, um, trying to organize like a know your rights training, ways to plug in, like informational session for all three churches that share the building. If we could coordinate, find a Sunday when we are there in person, and we can also coordinate them to do that, because I do think, um, that, yeah, there's like that's one of the ways we resist authoritarianism, that we just keep bringing more and more people into the work, and we just keep growing the community of resistance.
There's at least a half a dozen people, I think, on this call that have been actively engaged. So we have a lot of resources among us to share information and maybe tips about uh, how and what we can do to support all the things you've been talking about.
True that. Joey, you put your hand down. She's like, nah, I'm done. Yeah. Yeah, I would say, um as discouraging as the news is, I am really, so lifted up and enheartened by the great resistance rising up in our communities. So, all you fascists, you are bound to lose. Yeah, and there is actually, there was great song leadership at the event in Minneapolis, and now they're offering a lot of trainings. The one this afternoon filled up. There's another one Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening about, like this resistance songbook, bringing communities together to sing. Um, they had this great event this past week in Minneapolis where they filled that sanctuary again with folks. Um, and then they went and serenaded ICE agents outside the Hilton where they're staying. And they sang to them, encouraging them to quit their jobs and come join us on our side. It's great. I mean, it's just great. So, well, thanks everyone for taking a big chunk out of your Sunday to listen to me babble on even more. And thanks for sending me with your blessing. And thanks for being here for me to come home to and keep organizing and working with.